Being a housewife must be so relaxing. You just do household chores every day and probably don't get tired. You don't know how hard it is to earn money? Your everyday life seems so easy and enviable. I was tired of hearing this line time and time again. His attitude towards me, who supported our household as a full-time housewife, was unbelievable. The years of emotional abuse from him were becoming unbearable. I'm a 31-year-old full-time housewife. Even though we worked in different departments, we became close through a mutual friend at our company and got married when I was 29. Before marriage, we both had agreed to work and support our household. However, as our marriage progressed, my husband said, "I can take on more work and support our household by myself. I want you to be a housewife and take care of the home. Our working hours differ, and we might not have quality time as a couple. You can do the chores at your own pace. I want you to wait for me at home." Considering that we hadn't been spending much quality time together, I accepted his proposal. I left my job and have been living as a full-time housewife for the past year. I used to be the type who couldn't assert herself and would often go along with others' suggestions. Back then, I genuinely believed my husband was making these proposals with our best interests at heart. Accepting his suggestion, I quit my job to focus on our home. Trusting someone is essential, but now I think that trust backfired on me. I often wonder if things would have been different if I had continued working. Being a housewife, many assume that I just relax and laze around at home, but it's not that easy. Doing laundry, cleaning every room, engaging with neighbors, and other social interactions take up a lot of time. If you try to do everything correctly, time flies by. But if I don't do these tasks, they won't get done. Doing this 365 days a year, without a break, can be more mentally taxing than a regular job. Unlike employees who have weekends off, housewives don't get paid and don't have the concept of a weekend. So, on weekends, when my husband is lounging around the house, I once asked him if he could clean the bathroom while I brought in the laundry. He looked irritated and said, "Why? Just like I work outside, housework is your job, right? Since you don't have the stress of an outside job, you should do all the household chores. I provide for us, so let me rest on my days off. I appreciate that you work outside and support our household." But that wasn't the agreement for our time as a couple. Since we live together, wouldn't it be okay if you helped out just a little bit? Stop complaining. Someone without an income shouldn't talk back to me. If you complain so much, maybe you should live alone. Do you think you could survive on your own without any income if we got divorced? I was taken aback by his attitude. Whenever we argued, he would hint at divorcing, as if he had full control over me. Although I was once employed, the thought of losing my husband's income in the event of a divorce now, when I'm without a job, was devastating. How would I live if he seriously proposed a divorce? The thought of work and home was terrifying for someone like me without a job. The most frightening thing was my husband's change. He used to be very affectionate, but as we continued our married life, he changed. I never thought he would start making emotionally abusive remarks. Regretting marrying him became a frequent thought for me. Lately, when my husband returned home, he'd say, "A wife should greet her husband when he comes home. Who do you think provides for this lifestyle? My husband does bring money home, but I take care of all the household chores." We had agreed that both our roles were important, but over time, My husband started looking down on me as a stay-at-home wife. Initially, I thought he might be venting his frustrations from work, so I let him speak his mind. But eventually, he began to consistently belittle me. And so, our days became like this. After his complaints, he'd casually drop his clothes on the floor and change into his sweatpants. I'd pick up after him, doing the laundry. This became the norm. This dinner looks quite plain. I've been working all day, and this is what I get to eat? I had gotten used to such complaints. But as time passed, these emotionally abusive remarks started to bother me. It was always like this, and I was weary of it. Considering our not-so-abundant income and the potential need for future expenses if we had a child, I'd been saving money while also using it for our daily needs. There was never much extra money at the end of the month. Despite this, I always tried to prepare balanced meals for my husband, and yet, these complaints. I felt like my existence was being negated, and my confidence gradually eroded. Unaware of how I felt, my husband began demanding an increase in his allowance. We were already stretched thin. Any more expenses would jeopardize our finances. The savings I had been gradually depleting were now almost gone. So, with the help of my friends, I found a part-time job I could do from home. I hadn't told my husband about it. This was because when I had earlier suggested to my husband, our finances are tighter than before. I was thinking of working a bit in between my household chores. What do you think? Are you trying to imply that I'm not earning enough? You probably just want money for yourself. You can't even manage the house properly. Don't think about going out to work. Even if he had agreed, I anticipated he'd demand a larger allowance since I'd be earning. So, I decided to secretly work and save for my future. The work-from-home job was introduced to me through a friend. I could communicate with the company using just a computer from home. The main tasks involved were cost calculations and accounting for the company. I had worked before our marriage, so it wasn't particularly challenging. Managing the house on my own. Being able to contribute to society through this job felt good and was enjoyable. On a day when I was juggling household chores and the work-from-home job, I decided to take a short break after completing my tasks. What was supposed to be a 10-minute nap turned into a deep sleep until the evening. I had messed up. I was awakened by the sound of my husband returning home. Looking around, it was dark outside, and night had fallen. I hadn't prepared dinner. I hadn't even cleaned the bathroom. As soon as our eyes met, my husband let out a long sigh and said, "And it must be nice being a full-time housewife. Not working and just taking a break. You're still sleeping when I get home. It really feels like you're just leeching off of me." By now, I was used to his emotionally abusive remarks. But this time, I snapped and retorted. "Just because you saw me napping, you assume I did nothing all day." My husband probably didn't expect me to talk back. He turned livid and ranted. "You've got some nerve talking back. I'm the one supporting this household. I don't recall doing anything wrong to get this backlash. If you want to argue with me, then leave. If you insist, I'll leave. It's about time I reevaluated our relationship anyway." In the heat of the moment, our conversation had reached this point. I quickly gathered some essentials and decided to stay at a nearby business hotel. The stunned look on my husband's face when I said I was leaving. He probably never imagined I'd actually take action. The old me would have just been flustered without retorting when told to divorce or leave the house. But things were different now that I had my own income. Engaging with society had transformed the old me. Being able to assist someone else, receiving words of gratitude, and getting my work monetarily appreciated. No matter how much housework I did, it was always taken for granted. Working from home had become my emotional support. Through my job, I regained my confidence and started voicing my opinions to my husband. Perhaps it might be good to have some distance for a while. With that thought, I decided to live in the hotel for some time. I had brought my laptop, so work wasn't an issue. I even had a surprising experience of uncovering financial misconduct in a company. After about a week, my husband contacted me, thinking that if he was willing to reconcile, we could restart our marital life. I answered the phone. However, my husband, with his typical attitude, said, "Have you reflected on your actions? How long will you neglect the house? This time, I'll forgive you, so be grateful." His unchanged attitude disappointed me. Without a word from me, he said, "You must have realized how hard it is for a full-time housewife to live on her own. Why don't you come back? I'll forgive you if you do now." His tone was condescending. When did my husband become this person? I was completely taken aback, but I had no intention of just taking it lying down. That's what the week was for. So, I pretended to be at fault and decided to return home. There were still preparations to be made. "I'm sorry. I truly felt the hardships and will take care of the house properly from now on." As I humbled myself, my now appeased husband said, "As you should. You must realize how fortunate you are because of me." Though I disliked it, I decided to go home and continue with my preparations. The house, after being away for a week, was a mess. Clothes were strewn about, and the kitchen was filled with instant noodle trash. There was a mountain of what seemed to be laundry that had barely been done. I couldn't understand how it came to this. Perhaps he was feeling remorse over the phone, but was just too proud to admit it. Maybe he'd say he understood the hard work I did after coming home to see all the housework finished. I had a faint hope, but seeing the state of the house confirmed it. He likely reached out to me because he couldn't handle living on his own. He didn't want me back. He just wanted someone to clean up after him. I was once again astonished at my husband, but it was a good wake-up call. I no longer felt guilty about the decisions I was about to make. For about 2 weeks, I worked both as a housewife and at my remote job, just like before. I cleaned the mess he made, didn't retaliate against his derogatory remarks, and kept my peace. Once all my preparations were complete, the day finally came. That day, I neither prepared dinner nor a bath, simply waiting for him to return. Seeing the situation, he predictably got angry and began his slew of derogatory remarks. I listened quietly, head bowed, to his rant. Perhaps emboldened by my silence, he became even more heated. And finally, he uttered the words I had been waiting for. "You just say you're a full-time housewife, but you're just leeching off me. A woman like you, with no income and can't even do her own job, probably couldn't survive if she divorced me. I thought you reflected last time? But maybe I should just file for divorce." Every time he mentions divorce, he wears a smug expression. He thinks it puts me in a position where I have no choice but to obey. But I lifted my downcast face, smiled, and responded, "You don't need to prepare the divorce papers. I already got them." He looked completely taken aback, So, I presented the divorce papers in front of him. Of course, my section was already filled out and stamped. All that's left is for you to sign. He was utterly stunned. He probably never imagined that I would be the one to bring up divorce. If we divorce, you're the one who's going to suffer. Don't worry, I'm perfectly fine. More importantly, haven't you noticed how different the house looks? For the first time, he really looked around the house. Where's the sofa? And aren't the bookshelf and appliances missing too? Well, since I brought those when we got married, it's only natural for me to take them with me if I leave. I had movers transfer everything to my new place already. What do you mean? I thought you were always joking about divorce. Besides, how are you going to live without a job? You have no savings or income. I couldn't help but burst into laughter. You really haven't noticed, have you? We work at the same company. I've been handling cost calculations and accounting as a remote worker. We've been emailing each other, remember? The company that allowed me to work remotely was the same one I used to work for and where my husband currently works. The friend I mentioned was from that company. And since I had maintained a good relationship with my former boss, I explained the situation and was hired. I did wonder what would happen if he found out. But there was no way he would take notice of a single accountant from a large company. So it wasn't an issue. There's one more thing I should tell you. I noticed your misuse of company expenses and reported it to our boss. The person responsible for the fraudulent claims I had discovered during my week living in a hotel was my husband. Unnecessary transportation costs and false lodging expenses. Since we lived in the same house, I would instantly know if he was lying. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was deceiving the company out of money. Unfortunately for him, his wife, me, caught onto it when he thought he was in the clear. I investigated his claims against his activities on the dates in question and gathered all the evidence of his fraudulent reporting. I could have chosen not to report him. But after receiving a call from him and seeing the state of our home upon my return, I made up my mind. This man was no longer the husband I once loved. I had already reported his fraudulent claims to our superiors, and it was only a matter of time before he would be ousted from the company. His verbally abusive remarks and misuse of company funds make him a despicable person. I can live without you. I've been managing the household while balancing everything else. So I won't have any problems moving forward. Goodbye. My furniture, appliances, and everything else I brought into this house have already been moved to my new place. I would likely only see him when collecting the divorce papers. Leaving my flabbergasted husband behind, I left. I later heard from a friend that he was indeed let go from the company. Misusing company funds is a significant black mark when seeking new employment. And it seems he's having a tough time finding another job. Anticipating that he wouldn't be able to pay rent, he returned to his parents' house. Although we met once to finalize the divorce, he was reluctant to proceed. But when I indicated that I would involve a lawyer, he begrudgingly agreed to finalize the divorce. I have since returned to full-time employment from being a remote contract worker. With the divorce, I'll be on my own for a while. But I've decided to focus on my job during that time, so it's not a problem. However, I've been thinking that maybe, after some time, it might be nice to find a new relationship. The qualities I seek in a partner include not making verbally abusive remarks, being willing to work together, and being cooperative in household tasks.